when you're in a one-to-one sales conversation, a big part of what you're doing is asking the right questions and listening. Mm-hmm. So with copywriting, you don't get to do that.
From ReminderMedia, this is Stay Paid, a sales and marketing podcast on a mission to help you close more deals and retain more business. Hosted by the VP of Marketing, Josh Stake, and ReminderMedia's president, Luke Acree. So get ready to hear the golden nuggets that will allow you to live a life of freedom tomorrow, but only if you take action today.
Welcome to another episode of Stay Paid. I'm Joshua Stike along with Luke Acree. Today, we're going to be talking about copywriting and, more importantly, how to generate leads.
Money
comes
copy.
from leads from that copy. But first, we would love it if you take a minute and subscribe to Stay Paid on Apple Podcasts. If you're not already subscribed, and leave a review along with a comment to let us know how we're doing. This week's featured review comes from One Simple Mind via Apple Podcasts. They say their subject is real estate agent. So I think we know.
Okay, we know what they do.
What they do, yeah. 5 stars. Really enjoy listening to Josh and Luke. The content is always great, and they're both personable and funny. Great job.
Well, you're the funny one. I'm the personable one.
Am I the funny one? I would say you're definitely the personable one. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the dad jokes. Yeah,
it's not like I make those up.
I'm trying to drink a gallon of water a day.
Yeah.
Do you know how hard it is to actually drink a gallon of water a day? Like, it shouldn't be as hard as it is.
Does it count if it's in coffee form? Like,
I don't know. Technically, obviously there's water in it, but I'm trying to do like the pure water, like you drink, pure water, like the water from Tahiti. No, but I'm trying to do the gallon of water a day because, supposedly so many health benefits. It's crazy. I'm carrying around this jug. You've seen me carrying it around in the office. It's just nuts. That has nothing to do with copy, but I just wanted the audience to know what I'm going through.
It's the personable side.
Yeah.
It's the personable side. Now, our guest today, we're going to bring him on. His name is Jacob McMillan. He's a freelance writer turned entrepreneur who uses writing to build businesses and helps other writers do the same. Search copywriter in Google right now. Pull up your phone, search copywriter in Google. Jacob's site will be the first result there, which is super impressive. We're going to find out how he did that. Through Jacob's online courses and content, you'll learn the essentials of copywriting, which everyone can use in their business, on how to find more clients and how to build a recurring stream of inbound leads for your business. Jacob, welcome to Stay Paid. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, man. Excited to have you on the show. Copy is so important, so hard to do. We know this because we have hired writers, like professional writers, to try to write copy for us over the years. We've been at this for a long time now. And it's a different skill set than just writing. I mean, you're the expert, so you're going to, open up for us and kind of crack this code. But it's crazy. Like, we'll hire professional writers, but they don't write copy well. But then you'll find a marketer who can write copy really well and get people to respond. But before we dive into this topic, right, can you share just, who is Jacob? Tell us a little bit about your story, your journey. How did you get to #1 on Google in copywriting?
Yeah, totally. So I definitely never planned to be to be a professional writer. Writing was the thing that, you kind of had to do for English class in school. I was actually an accounting major, and the only thing I knew when I finished my bachelor's degree is that I did not want to be an accountant. But over the course of college, I had actually done door-to-door sales to pay my way through school. And I kind of the selling process was really intriguing to me. There were certain parts about it I didn't like, that I didn't necessarily envision sales as my future. But there were, it clicked for me, the process of, sitting down with someone and taking them through the sales process. I really enjoyed that. And so when I sort of started to get into the online business, online marketing world out of college, and pretty quickly came across copywriting, which is sort of like asynchronous sales. It's like you're doing the sales process, but instead of it being that one-to-one conversation, it's sort of like you have to anticipate how someone's going to engage with your message. And I just found that super intriguing, was really interesting. And I kind of, within that context, started to realize that I actually did enjoy writing. I just didn't like the writing I'd done in school. And then kind of, diving into that world, I started realizing, wow, you can make a whole lot of money doing this. And so, when you have something you're sort of good at, you kind of enjoy, and you see can make a whole lot of money, it's like, ding, 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 this is the career. And, here I am 8-9 years later and been doing it for the whole time. At first it was just freelance, it was it was really hard to say no when people wanted to flash me a few grand to, write some words for them, and did that for several years. And then it sort of started clicking like, wait a second, if like I can write something for them that's making them so much money, they can pay me like 5-10 grand to do it for them. I bet I could make more money writing for myself and my own products and my own things. So then I started using, writing to build some businesses of my own. And I'm still sort of in the early stages of that journey. I'm making more than I made freelancing from that now, but the ceiling on that is so much higher than, just selling your own time for money. So it's been a fun journey, and, built a little bit of an audience along the way, showing them what I'm doing. I'm very much in the, experiment by doing and then talk about what you're doing and let other people learn from it. It's how I learned so much of what I know is watching other people do that, sort of the build in public type idea. So I've definitely been on that train since the beginning. And
so break down for everybody, like what is copywriting? What makes that a unique form of writing? And how could a non-writer like yourself, maybe the people that are listening, obviously we have a lot of real estate agents listening, financial advisors. These are people that kind of run their own business, right? So they're having to wear a lot of hats. In a lot of scenarios, they might be writing their own copy for their emails. So explain the difference between copy versus content. How can someone sort of start to approach the process?
Yeah. So, I mean, most everyone, watching this, you kind of already understand sales. Sales is kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis. And one of the biggest reasons people struggle with copy is they think it needs to be different once they start writing. They think they need to go into this whole other process. But copy is it's just sales through writing. That's all it is. Copywriting is it's the sales process. You're putting it into writing. And so really to do great copywriting, all you need to do is envision the person you'd be having the conversation with, and then think through like, hey, if I were to sit down and talk with this person, what would be the message that I take them through from beginning to end, all the way to the close where I'm looking to get them, to take an action. You're doing the exact same thing via copywriting. The only difference is when you're in a one-to-one sales conversation, a big part of what you're doing is asking the right questions and listening. Mm-hmm. So with copywriting, you don't get to do that. So what you have to do instead is you have to have already asked the right questions. So if you're writing copy to an audience you understand well, this is great because you've already had the one-to-one conversations. You've already been through this with them. You know what they're thinking about. You know the challenges they're looking to solve. You know the benefits they're looking to obtain. So it's just about kind of anticipating that. And then you're predicting, you're anticipating what they would say in that one-to-one conversation, but still walking them through the exact same thing.
So I'm curious because I think the hardest part from a writing standpoint for copy is understanding like, should you here's, I guess I'll explain it through my problem when I sit down to write copy is like, I almost want to like overwrite. And there's this balance between like simple and like, long form text. And you think of like emails, like I'd love to get your take right now of people who are trying to prospect on LinkedIn through messages, right? Or trying to prospect through email right now. Like, what's your view on long form and just writing out that whole conversation? Because we have some emails right now from our company coming from me as if I'm speaking to the real estate agent or financial advisor I'm prospecting. And it's a pretty long conversation. And those emails are doing pretty well for us. But then I go to my sales floor and it's like any emails that are written out by them that are any bit more than a paragraph long,
or a sentence,
or a sentence long, get nothing, right? It has to be super short. Like, what's your take on that from the length standpoint?
Yeah, so it's all about context, just like if you're meeting with someone, say you're a realtor and you're meeting with a client, the conversation you're going to walk them through when they've said, hey, I'm ready to sell my house might be a lot different and a lot more intensive than the conversation you have when they're just like, hey, like I'm looking at the market. Like, what do you think about this? They ask you maybe a specific question. If you give them a whole spiel, then they're gone. You kind of want to like, you have a specific thing a specific nugget you're looking to impart. It's kind of like that. When we talk about an online sales funnel, which is where copywriting comes into play, every step of that process of that customer journey is going to look a little different. So the biggest piece to copywriting is understanding where's the reader at this point in the journey? What information are they looking for? And how can I communicate that really clearly, either as succinctly as I need to, or, taking as much time as I need to dig into, various aspects. So it's very contextual. Every different point in that journey is going to have a completely different need in terms of what you want to communicate.
Is the problem that people try to speak to everybody instead of really, like you see this in business, the more you niche down, the better results a lot of times you have. The more I focus, should I as a writer, as I'm writing, really hone in and focus on speaking to one person in one situation and write it totally for that? Because I think the struggle is, right, you always want to share all your features and all the benefits. Because I think of our product, the magazine. It can help with an open house. It can help at a seminar. It can be a touch point for your clients. You can give it to a prospect. Like, do you find that one message honed in, or is it just one person? Is it more about the person than the actual message? Not sure if that makes sense.
So the way I see it, because you can, I've seen people who go really hyper niche. They really look to target in on a specific segment, and they kind of start with the right segment and grow off of that, and it works really well. And then there's other people, sometimes niche and segmentation gets a little overhyped. You look at people who are killing it, and a lot of times they have huge audiences and they're talking to the whole audience the exact same way. What I think is even more important than either of those is more understanding what's the most urgent need. And instead of trying to give them the full thing, because, as a business owner, you're very aware of all the different things you've done in your business to provide value to your clients. You're very conscious of every little thing, every little decision, every feature benefit. But a lot of times when you're communicating with your audience, they don't care about all those things right now. They have one thing that they're focused on, or they have one benefit or piece of value that they're really looking for in the moment. And so understanding sort of what that early driver is that's going to attract them to your brand and move them forward at that point in the customer journey is key. For example, as a freelance writer, I do quite a few different types of writing. Long form blog content is a big part of what I do. And then I also do landing pages and things like that. I found, though, early in my career that people understood the need for really good website copy a lot more than they understood the need for good blog posts. So I knew that hey, when someone shows up to my website and reaches out to me, that's kind of usually the most urgent need. So if I focus my messaging and branding around that specific need, then a lot of times I'll be able to move people to another point in the conversation where we talk about content marketing and blog writing. But it's not usually the most urgent, most understood need that my audience at large had. So by focusing on that more urgent piece and not trying to do it all at once, not trying to focus on every little bit of value that I brought to the table, then it allows you to just really position yourself as, hey, I'm here to solve your challenge, not educate you about who I am or my expertise. And that's really what customers and clients want, is they have their own specific problem that they want to solve. And if you can be the person who comes in and focuses purely on solving that for them, then oftentimes they'll be open to the next step.
Yeah. I think we had someone on here on the podcast said, if you're able to explain your customers' pain points better than they can themselves, then they'll automatically trust you. It's kind of the awareness phase, right? You have to understand your audience, what phase or stage of the awareness funnel are they in? Are they problem aware, meaning they know they have a problem, they might need to live somewhere? Right. Are they solution aware, meaning they kind of know what solution they want? And then ultimately it's product aware, I think, is the final phase, where it's they now know you, your company, your product, what you provide. Yep. And those would be the different types of segmentation you might want to think about. A lot of that would be maybe your autoresponders when people are filling out lead forms on your website, where a lot of that awareness would come into play. I'm curious though, when it comes to email marketing, we get this question a lot from our clients. I would love to hear, what are some of your tips or pointers for subject lines, right? To get people to do that first thing, which is you got to get them to open the email before they can even read your copy.
Yeah, I think it has a little bit to do with the nature of the relationship. So the more personalized the overall email relationship is, the more you can get away with in terms of like curiosity hooks and things like that. Like my email list for my writing training is very engaged, very personalized. So I can even do, objective clickbait once in a while and get away with it just because, if I lean into the joke basically, or, a lot of audiences, that's just not going to fly because it's a little bit more straightforward, or it's more, it's a little more transactional or things like that. So kind of just comes down to understanding that. But I think looking to the two things you want to, keep in mind is that the biggest impact on your open rate is the name next to the email. You want people to associate, your email with great value. And if you do that, and, if the email subject line is at least connected to the value you're offering, and you're not abusing the reader, then, you can go for opens. You can kind of play around with, doing things that are funny, or doing things that kind of like just show up, the emojis that highlight you in their inbox. It's just kind of like, I think the nature of the subject lines themselves is not super important as long as the email has good value and it's connected to the subject line.
No, I think you're so spot on. We had Jill Fanslaw on the podcast, and she used the acronym ROT. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but it's like your messages, your emails can't be redundant, obsolete, right? Meaning no longer relevant, or I just had the T in my mind. Trivial. Trash also works. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's the value. So what process do you go through when building like an email newsletter or nurture sort of stream to keep your emails full of value? Yeah. I mean, what kind of process are you going through each week or day, or how often do you even send your emails out? I'm curious to your list.
Yeah. So I usually send 2 emails a week.
Okay.
But they're always connected to new content. My email list is mostly like the distribution arm for my content marketing. So basically, I have like a 10-minute video / podcast that goes out every Monday. Nice. So I email with just kind of like an intro to that. And then on Wednesday, I'll put out like a long form training piece. And so I'll send out an email for that. And then, if I'm emailing outside of that, it's to, announce some sort of special thing going on, or run a sale or something like that. So, it's kind of just like, for me, it's the strategy is kind of just more my content strategy. It's, knowing the right blog content and that. But whether you're doing the longer form or you're just condensing it all to the email, I mean, it's just about knowing, hey, what does my audience care about? What are they struggling with? What are they asking about? I mean, at the end of the day, like there's certain topics that I really want to talk more about, but it's not what people are really looking for and asking about. So I kind of have to, you kind of have to balance that. Like, hey, what do I think's really important? What do I think people really need to hear versus like, what are they asking about? What do they want to hear about? And just sort of doing a mix of those. And that kind of like, that way you're giving them what they're looking for, but also you're finding ways to introduce what, key moments that are going to establish your thought leadership and make them feel like they're getting something from you that they aren't getting from, maybe the 10 other people who talk about similar topics on that.
Yeah.
That's super good.
I want to talk about SEO and kind of, that's something that you've definitely done a great job with. I want to hear how you're maintaining that number 1 spot in searches for Copywriter, and then maybe talk about how can a local professional capture local audience through search.
Yeah. So my secret weapon, I'll give you we'll just lead with the secret, the big moment.
That's what people listen for.
Would probably argue with me about, but I don't care. Time on page, like read time of your articles. If you look at a lot of my top, pieces of content that are ranking, they're getting like 6.5, 7-minute read time. And that's like, ever since I started focusing on SEO and content marketing, like I had a small conversion rate optimization agency, and we were beating, CXL, which is the biggest agency in the game. We were beating, VWO and Optimizely, which are like, 7-8 figure A/B testing software. And we were beating them for their top terms. because our content was more in depth and it was actually enjoyable to read. That's kind of the trick. You see people all the time throwing up these mega guides, but how often have you actually clicked on a mega guide that you wanted to stick around and read? You know? So that's kind of the big thing for me is, SEO targeting, on-page SEO, all that stuff's pretty simple. It's mostly a checklist. Going past that, I think that the thing that allowed me to get that ranking was just creating, as someone who was my target audience, had been my target audience for years and has had 4,000 conversations with people in that target audience over the last 2 years. I just made a guide that I felt was, perfectly suited for people in that position, genuinely gave them everything they were looking for. And then the other thing too, over the years, I feel like Google's adjusted their algorithm to focus more on kind of niche specialization. So what I mean by that is it used to be that companies that just had the most content got the big rankings. But now I feel it's almost like, if your website is focusing on too many, adjacent niches, you almost lose your power to rank for the top stuff in a specific niche. So for me, my website has been solely focused around copywriting topics, and that's allowed me to rank for, rank in the top 3 results for almost every copywriting related key phrase. And so, keeping focused on that niche, I think is really powerful right now. And things adjust year to year, but it seems like that's the direction things have been going. So it's kind of those two things. It's specialization, focus, and then also, getting those long read times on your articles.
Do you find with the read times on the articles, is there a framework that you use? Are you doing a clickbait headline? Are you doing listicles? Is there a framework you use to write your blogs? Because a little bit of what I'm hearing is you got to produce really good written content. But if I'm not a writer, how do I do that? What's a framework? Yeah, I can do that in.
Yeah. In terms of practicals, making a good promise, for me, that's how I do it. I make my promise in the headline.
Okay.
And I try to balance it between giving the best possible result you could get from that, even if it's maybe not the average result. So giving a really strong promise in the article headline, and then structure. Honestly, structure is so big. When we talk about long form, especially, you want to treat it like a lesson plan. If you were to have a bunch of people in a room and try to walk them through this concept, this thing that you want to teach them, how would you do it? You have to start with context. You have to build. Each piece needs to build on the piece before it. A lot of people don't approach blog content like that. They sit down and they write whatever comes to them. Maybe they rearrange it a little, but there's not a whole lot of, intentionality. Even people who are doing a lot of long form in the space, who are even succeeding at it, what I see is a lot of times people they just try to throw everything they can think of on a page. It's very horizontal content. It's just here's something else I could say on that, splotch it on the page. You get to the end, you see these little hang off sections of 10 extra tips on this topic you just spent 3,000 words talking about. That's not genuinely useful content. When you're talking about something that someone should genuinely devote enough time to read 4,000 words, you really want it to be intentional. You really want it to be a process. You want to move them from A to Z in their thinking. And so structuring it that way, and then also sort of, piecing it together where, you flow from each section to the next with a new promise, so you kind of set the table with context, and then you're like, here's why that matters to lead them into the next one. Here's a story of how that worked, For example, just things that make it more tangible and that motivate people to move from section to section down through the piece of content.
That's great.
What are some quick basic tips? I mean, I know a lot of this stuff is obvious to you because you know it so well, but for someone who doesn't understand SEO, but they want to start a blog and they want to start ranking some articles, what are some quick basic tips that you would throw right off the bat to help them direct their copy towards being search engine friendly and findable, searchable, I guess, in their area?
Yeah. So, I would say just focus for every post you do, focus on one search term.
Do you recommend short terms or like the long tail with like longer search? Like what's your sort of philosophy? Because I know people sort of fall into different strategies there.
Yeah. So this is where I'm at. I've been a little bit traditionally at odds with most of the SEO community because for a while now there's been a focus on long tail.
Yeah.
But some of the data that's been coming out, and it's what I've been observing for years now, is that most of the traffic doesn't go to the long tail. It gets caught up in the shorter terms, you know? And so that's kind of one of those things to me, like anywhere between 2 to 4 words, I think is pretty good. Like the stronger your blog is, maybe you go up to 2, 3. Whereas if you're starting out, maybe you're more like 3, 4. And then just, take the high level topic. If you don't have any SEO tools, take the high level topic, Google it, and look at the phrases that Google suggests. They'll suggest like people also search for, and then click on one of those and see what it adds there. Just throw those into a spreadsheet. You could use something like Quora to look up questions people are asking around whatever the topic or niche you're in is, and just put together a spreadsheet of ideas for that people are searching for. And for every one of them that doesn't have an obvious match in terms of intent, like some of them will be, hey, if you're searching for this, you're searching for this as well. It's just whatever phraseology comes to mind. But for everything else, if it's a different intent, just do a new post for each one. And if it's, if you're kind of doing this on the side, you don't have a lot of time, you don't need to start by doing 4,000 words a post. Maybe do 1,000 words per post. And then if you see that some of your articles are starting to peak up on the second or third page, then you can hop in and add another 2,000 to 3,000 words and see if you can bump it up to the front page. But yeah, a lot of people, I know people who have been blogging for 4 or 5 years and they get no search traffic because they don't target search terms, they just think of a topic and write the blog, and that's great. It may work for their content marketing, but if you're specifically going after SEO, you have to target search phrases. You kind of don't luck into random search traffic anymore these days.
Yeah, it has to be intentional. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. All right, man. So got to ask you, because we ask every successful person who comes on the show, as you look at your life and what's driven success for you, what are the routines that you have implemented in your life to get you where you're at today?
Yeah, I don't really consider myself a example of productivity, but I will say that probably the biggest framework that I've done is that I am willing to spend time experimenting with new things, not just asking, does this work? I feel like a lot of people will ask someone they know, hey, would this work? And then they stop there, try it. I try stuff, that's been a big thing for me, is I'm willing to actually take the time to go try stuff. But then too, and probably even more important, is if something works, I keep doing it, even if it's not my favorite method or the sexiest approach, if it works, I keep doing it. And so I'm kind of, in seasons where I'm feeling very productive, I'll do the thing that works, the big pillar piece that's really moving me forward, and I'll experiment. When things are kind of not going great and I'm not feeling very productive, I'll scratch all the experimentation and just keep focused on, the big wheel that keeps moving me forward. And I think Noah Kagan once mentioned something of at AppSumo, they always 75% of the budget goes to continuing the thing that's worked.
I love that.
25% of the budget goes to trying a new strategy. Yes. And then they'll try something for 1 to 2 months. And if it doesn't work, they scrap it and try something else. And that's kind of a pretty good framework for how I've approached my own career. Is just, if you can just stay focused on the one thing that's working for you, you can kind of be inefficient and suboptimal in a lot of other ways and still get more progress than, someone who hasn't found that flywheel to move them forward.
No, I think so many people miss that point too. And we were just doing a webinar the other day where it's one of them, when you're setting your marketing budget, where do you spend your marketing money? Where the revenue came from. Go back, look at what worked in the past, lead your strategies from the revenue that's being brought in. So thank you so much, Jacob, for coming on the show here. Before we close out, let people know how they can find you, other than Googling copywriter on Google. Let people know how they can find you, and can they hire your services? Can they use your services, or is it more of a course and training sort of program? How does that work?
Yeah, so I still work with, clients. It's a lot more selective these days, but I still work with clients who, if you're looking to really, really invest in content marketing and you're, looking for someone who can help you put together that core SEO and content strategy, I absolutely, help out with that in varying degrees. And then for people who are just looking to, learn copywriting or looking to build a copywriting business to, build some cash flow on the side or whatever, or just learn it for their own businesses. I have tons of training on my website, jacobmcmillan.com. And, over 176,000 words of free content at this point. So lots of stuff there. Come on by. I'm happy to meet you.
Definitely check that out. jacobmcmillan.com. We're going to include a link to that site on the show notes for this podcast as well. You can get that over at staypaidpodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you again, Jacob, for being here. If you want to get hold of me or Luke, you can connect with us. We are on Instagram at staypaidpodcast. And you can connect with Luke, get hold of him on Instagram at Luke Acree.
Yes.
So make sure you check that out. Thank you so much for listening again. For this episode of Stay Paid, I'm Joshua Stike.
Did you mention how you can help the show? Or?
No, because I did
I was like, wait, you didn't say how you can help the show.
I'm trying to change it up.
There's two ways, Josh, you can help the show.
I started doing the reviews plus subscribe at the beginning of the show. So I felt like I was doing too much.
You felt like it was reiteration. Nah, we gotta encourage people. There's two ways you can help the show.
Luke, take it away.
One is you can go and rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
He's sucking at this.
You can write a 5-star review. Please write a 5-star review.
Please write a 5-star.
Yeah, I mean, if you write a 1-star review, we'll take it.
We got one star review. They didn't even leave a comment.
Yeah, seriously. It was bad copywriting. It was very bad copywriting. But you can write a 5-star review, or you can tell a friend, which is the better version. Because we do this podcast because we want to add value to you and to your friends and to everybody who's in your sphere. So share it with your friends. So please do that. For this episode, this is Josh Stike to my right over here.
Right here.
I'm Luke Acree. Here's your action item for the episode, because I was thinking through this, right? Because all of us have to really get good at this idea of copy, because copy is ultimately what's going to get people to engage, right? And when you get people to engage, you can get them to take action on the message that you're delivering. And that's what's going to result in them actually being a lead for your business and hopefully, a transaction for your business, get you a commission check. I love the idea of putting your promise in your headline. So I want you to try that this week. So look at your emails that you're sending, look at the blogs that you're putting out there, right? And put your promise in your headline and see, and then obviously you got to fulfill that promise, right? In your actual copy, but put your promise in your headline, take action on that. Remember, the difference between a top producer and a mediocre producer is top producers take action. Take action on that today.